5 different areas that we call potholes that result in a business having a value less than it might otherwise be. So what our objective here is to try and put together some ideas, some thoughts, so that we can share with you ideas that come from different businesses, and you can prepare your business to sell it. Now, for some reason, being the technical experts that we are, and even having rehearsed this last night, my slideshow's not advancing.
It's still not advancing?
It's not advancing. There we go. Hey, all right. So what we're trying to do is fill in these potholes, and potholes are things that cause a deal not to go forward. And potholes can be small little ones that just cause a deal to your car to bounce a little bit. Potholes can be a little bit bigger and actually derail deals, or potholes can be very, very large and completely sink a deal. We're going to try and fill in some of these potholes, and there's probably about 20, 25 of them that we've identified. But we're going to try and fill in a couple of them today. The 5 we're going to focus on today. First, being number 1 and the effect on value. 2, your customer relationships and the effect that that's going to have. Brain drain, how people look at the fact that some of your knowledge is going to leave. The family in a family business, and how growth trends affect value. So we're going to play road crew. Try and smooth the road out, fix a few potholes, and fix things up. I'm David Humphrey, president of Beacon Equity Advisors, and we focus on the sale of closely held businesses. And like I said a moment ago, we're going to try and take knowledge from a whole variety of other businesses and put this knowledge together for you. These are things that have caused other business owners pain at some point during the deal process, and if we can help you out and move that forward, your deal is going to work a little bit better. So, a lot of businesses over the last 20 years, we're going to try and put that knowledge together for you. Chris, tell us a little about yourself.
Christopher DeCenzo, the founder partner, Growth Strategy Partners. I think what's maybe relevant to listeners today, 3 things in particular. For myself, I've personally developed and implemented some successful growth strategies for clients and helped them grow. I've also, we work with clients and advise them how to grow their business, how to get prepared for an exit. And I think the third thing that might be interesting for people to know is that a bunch of years ago I did go through the process of actually trying to buy a business myself. So I've actually been on the buyer's side. So help them grow, help them, advise them how to get prepared for growth, and actually been involved in the buying process. Now, Growth Strategy Partners, what we've done, Dave, you've hit that button again. Can you go back one slide? Growth Strategy Partners, what we can do is we can actually quickly and effectively grow your revenues, your profit, and your talent. So we're looking at both profit growth and revenue growth. And to do that, we've identified, we call this 7 keys to growth. Through a lot of research with growing entrepreneurs, growing business owners, what drives growth, we identified these 7 keys to growth. And we therefore applied those keys to growth to get impacts like 500% revenue growth and 100% profit growth. Probably over the last 6 years, we've been taking that growth knowledge and applying it with mergers and acquisition firms like Beacon Equity to help owners be prepared for growth so that we can help them get prepared, and then what David and Beacon can do is sell them. And that's how we're kind of positioning things today, as Beacon Equity Advisors would be the firm that actually could help you sell that business, get prepared, but help you sell it. And Growth Strategy Partners can be the firm that helps you get prepared and solve some of these potholes. And that's kind of what we're going to go through today. Is David's going to explain what the potholes are, and Chris, I'm going to try to explain, how do you resolve them, how do you overcome them. Now, first thing we want to do before we jump into the potholes is take a little poll. So we're going to try another technical challenge here and ask you to take a poll, which is just to get an understanding where you're coming from, which the question is, when are you planning on selling your business? So what I ask you to do is go on and just click on this one of the buttons. I want to sell my business in the next year, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 years, or actually I don't have plans to sell it at this time. I'm really looking to grow it. So if you just click on this, and actually we'll share with you also, the audience here, I'll give you a good idea of where we can address this. We've got almost everybody voted, which is actually pretty good. And it looks like we've got a decent mix of people. Of course, you don't know that yet because I haven't shared that with you. But I'm going to close this because we're just about already done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to share that with you. And then you can take a look here. And everybody should see that. David, you see that? Can you see it, Dave?
But I have a different screen, so go ahead.
Okay, so what we see here is, at least what we're seeing is that most people don't have plans right now to sell. 61% don't have plans to actually sell their business right now, followed by 28% that are looking to sell in 4 to 5 years, and there are some that are looking to sell in the next year or so. So we've actually got a broad mix here. That's good. Let me pass it back to David, and then we'll continue now with the potholes, give a little understanding of people that are in the audience. Okay, David, you should have us back under your control.
All right.
And he's trying.
Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Pothole number 1. Pothole number 1 is about being number 1. In our experience, people pay more money for companies that are a leader in some aspect of their field. And understand a little bit that we're selling to a buyer. And part of what we need to understand is what a buyer wants to know. A buyer wants to know, buyer wants to be able to brag to his investors, to his spouse, to his partners, to his friends, that the company he bought excels in some area. So part of what we want to look at for each company is what about that particular company gives them the opportunity to brag, gives them the opportunity to be number 1. Is it breadth of products? How do they differentiate themselves from the big boys? Do they even have more delivery trucks? What about this particular business helps the business become number 1 and therefore is more competitive? What a buyer is always worried about is that the business may become irrelevant over the next several years. Being a leader, the leader in the industry is less likely to become irrelevant.
Still working with that advance button, huh?
I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Now, part of what I want you to also keep in mind, if you want the buyer to leave skid marks in your parking lot, tell him that customers buy from you because of the relationship with the owner. Tell them they buy from you because you have the lowest price. Those things scare buyers, and we want to try and avoid that. Chris, how do we work to fix some of these things?
And before I get started, I did see a question or a comment that we need to speak up a little louder, David. There, I think the audio is just okay, so I'm going to try to speak a little louder here. How do you become number 1? And then, almost more importantly, who decides that you're number 1? Sometimes it's you. More often than not, it's your customer. This is a little exercise that we've done quite often with our clients to help them understand where are they number 1. And it's actually quite simple exercise. And I'm going to give you kind of the high-level approach to it, which is first you kind of list what some of the characteristics are that you think. It's a little internal exercise to start. What do you think you are number 1 in? Is it the service? And again, I've got the short version here, the abbreviated version, but what kind of service? The quick service, the great service, the responsive service, the products. Is it a great product? Is it the innovative product? Is it a low-cost product? The relationships, price. So what are the characteristics that you think you're good at? And then prioritize them. There's a list here of just 7. We prioritize service as 1, products as 2, relationships as number 3. So you're basically prioritizing what you think is the customer's number 1 reason to be working with you. Then you identify how important that is in the buyer's decision-making process. Here it's saying that service has an importance of 35% of that decision-making. It's number one. And then the third thing that you want to do is put a score. Identify how well you think you're doing. I used a 1 through 10 score here, and so they've identified themselves as an 8 in service and a 9 in product. Now, what this is doing, and what you're going to do is you're going to do this internally, and then you're going to go outside. You're going to go to your customer base, and you're going to collect the same information. And here's a little sample of maybe how you might do that. It's actually a quick 10, 12 question survey. It's nothing elaborate. And you're going to ask questions like, well, what are the top 3 reasons you do business with our company? You're going to start with an open-ended question, not necessarily saying, how are my prices and how's my service? But then how would you rank the importance of these? And there's your 1 through 10 scale. How would you rate our company overall? Then you can start asking questions about, well, who is your top performing supplier and why? What are they doing that might be better than what we're doing? And then you can get into some sales questions. How much of your total business do we provide? Even though you're trying to find number one, you might be trying to find, hey, can we sell you more business? And then this last question on the scale of 1 to 10, what's the likelihood that you would recommend our company to a friend or associate? This is actually, there's a whole article in Harvard Business Review written about this number one question, Net Promoter Score, which is, would you recommend this business to a friend or associate? Now, what we're doing here is just giving you a framework to how to find out, are you number one and where are you number one? Quite often we work with business owners and they have some understanding or beliefs or really assumptions of where they think they're number one and why. And then we go out and do this exercise, they get different answers. Usually the top 5 don't change, but the priority does. So, a little exercise on how you can go identify where you're number one and mitigate that pothole. David, back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Let's go to pothole number 2. Here we go, pothole number 2. Pothole number 2 is about our customer relationships. And in a world where so much of our knowledge, so much of what we're selling is based on customer relationships, we need to work together to create sticky customer relationships, offering better products, but putting together non-compete agreements with our clients, putting together with our staff, putting together long-term relationships with our clients, putting together facets and aspects of our business that change our business from about being about me and the client to about being the client and the company. That's what buyers are willing to buy. That's what buyers are willing to pay more money for, is companies where the relationship is with the business, not with the people in the business. So we're going to work on, and we're going to point out areas inside of business where some of these issues exist. Chris, what are some of the things we can do once we find this challenge?
Well, things you want to avoid, and things that we hear and see a lot, relationships where, hey, me and the customer, we golf all the time. Our families vacation together. He's my cousin, he's my sister, he's my brother, it's family, right? These are things that we hear and see a lot, and what that's doing is it's driving the relationship between the customer and the owner, or the customer and the family, okay? So we need to avoid those relationships. We want to obviously avoid they go out to bid every year, or they've got a new purchasing manager every year. There's a rotation going on. So how do you deal with that? Well, here's my first thing. Take a vacation. If you are the person that has that key relationship, take a vacation. Okay, take vacations, as you can see here. And obviously, but before you do that, let's set up some relationships with maybe new managers, whether it be account managers or salespeople. Rotate those around. Assess where you think you have some stronger relationships and some weaker relationships. There was actually an example years ago in one of my previous consulting companies I worked for. One of the senior managers was the prime connection with one of our clients. and the partner in charge let the senior manager kind of run with the whole project. And it was actually a very good-sized project. So this senior manager had that strong relationship. What happened was the client decided to hire the senior manager rather than have him pay for consulting fees. And because he was the only relationship, that firm that I was with lost that whole client. They just hired the guy and he was gone. So there was nothing sticky at all. It was purely just too concentrated on one person. So you need to avoid that. Okay? Let's go on to pothole number 3. And David, got another comment that I think they're having troubles hearing you again, so you need to speak up a little.
All right, I'll try. I hope this is going to be better, guys. Brain drain. And then again, in a world where so much of the knowledge is intellectual property, buyers worry, they fear that the knowledge leaves with the sale. What? What did I know? What you know is where value is inside your business, those customer relationships. And so what we want to do is work together to identify key core business processes and knowledge and put together systems within the company that help protect this knowledge. Chris, how do we do that?
And before I get to this, David, the previous slide talked about the fear that knowledge leaves with the sale, right? Is there also an issue about that knowledge leaving before the sale, okay, or during that transaction? I assume that's also something that everyone should be worried about?
People are worried about knowledge going home at night and not coming back the next morning.
Some people use the car theory or the bus theory. I like to use the millionaire theory, but either way, if they don't come back, it's not productive for the company. So what do we do? Knowledge is embedded in the processes that each organization has. And in order to grow a business and make it more successful, in fact, one of the keys to growth is robust processes, and how to mitigate this brain drain is to identify what the core processes of your business are. Where is that knowledge? And now start to codify it, whether it be manuals or policies, procedures, or some tools. You need to identify what those core processes are, kind of document them, and pull that knowledge that Mary, Peter, and John has about who gets what discount and when do they ship this thing, and what configuration does it go out the door in, and how do they like to get their bills. All that information needs to be consolidated so it's not lost. I mean, regardless of a sale or not, the minute someone walks out that door, that information's gone. We're working with a client right now that's trying to grow on the sales side, and they're expanding into new markets, new customers. And when we had some initial conversations about, well, who are our big customers and who are we going to go after, some of the salespeople who were new and had some great experience were listing off the names that they knew in their heads. And as I talked to the president, I said, do we have any of this, captured? He's like, well, no, not really. So we initiated a CRM, customer relationship management initiative, to start collecting and codifying who are the prospects, who are the customers, what do they buy, how do they like to have their product delivered. And, it's been about 6 months or so, and the president is going, this is great. This is great. He can actually go in now and see what's going on, who's doing it, actually gets into who's making calls, who are they talking to, and what's the outcome. These are one of the things that you need to do. This is core whether you're looking to exit, and as we saw here, many people looking to grow. This is huge. Okay, David, 4.
Well, especially with regard to brain drain, brings us up with the concept of family in a family business. And we love family businesses. They are the backbone of the American society. But one of the challenges is that when family businesses are sold, so much of the family wants to make a change. For instance, dad is president, mom is the office manager, son runs the shop, daughter serves as bookkeeper. They all tend to want to leave at the time of the sale. And these tend to be the people with the most contact with the customers. So all of a sudden we have a significant change from a customer standpoint at the time of the sale. So when dad sells the business, if it's his business, he leaves. Is mom coming in Monday morning, or is mom going to retire too? She's probably retiring. The question then comes in, who does the son owe his loyalty to? Is he going to stay work in the shop? And if he stays, is he reporting to dad or is he reporting to the new boss? What about the daughter? Does the new guy want to trust the bookkeeper that was the old person's bookkeeper who still owes loyalty to dad? These are questions that create fear in the mind of a buyer. What we need to work on is how can we fix this situation over the next couple of years before we get to sale. And several of our attendees today are planning on selling in 4 to 5 years. Chris, how do we fix this situation over the next 4 to 5 years?
Should I say don't have kids? Is that an answer? Is that acceptable?
I'm assuming there are adult kids in the business.
All of our clients, I think between David and I, all of our clients are family businesses, and I actually know a bunch that are on the call today who are involved in family business and have family in the business. This is probably one of the most difficult things that the family business needs to deal with. You know, how do you deal with concentration of family members if and when that time's coming to sell, let alone the fact that whether they're carrying their weight today or not. And that's a whole other issue. Now, here's what we've done that's worked fairly well. Like we see down below about identify, you know, how you're going to make change and when in planting seeds. So there's usually, there can be some issues with family just in general day-to-day transactions. And by looking at maybe the growth plans for the business, okay, whether it includes exit planning or not, the question is what resources, what skills, you know, what behaviors do we need in this business, and do the people that are in those positions fit what we need? And we actually take this beyond the family. This isn't a family issue, although that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the right seats and the right people in it. Again, one of the 7 keys to growth is having the right people in the right seats. Then you add the family dynamic to that as well. Frankie doesn't really fit very well. Now what do you do? Now, you know, I've professed to say you should probably treat Frankie almost the same way you'd treat a non-family member. We should address that maybe Frankie's not a good fit, and you know we need to make a transition. The key word here is transition. Typically, you're not going to fire an employee or a family member, you know, immediately unless they do something grave. But we need to start identifying how's that transition going to occur. And so you plant the seeds that, you know, maybe we need to start making some transitions in certain roles and or because of this sale that might be coming up or goal for a sale. And then start looking at, okay, where are the best opportunities to grow the business through positions? Where are there maybe some holes in the business, skill-wise, behavior-wise? You know, knowing that a lot of family businesses, the people grow up in the business, and it gets to a point, geez, maybe the business has outgrown them. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this isn't right. So identify where the skills and the roles that need to be changed, and maybe that's part of the family, and then you can make a transition. So the transition is, look, let's look at finding a new job, Frankie, in the next 3 to 6 months. All right, but you know, you're not going to leave until we've got something backfilled on the other side. So this is a transition where if it's all up on the table, it actually works very, very well. We've had some great success stories where we've had these open conversations, and it was like, Frankie's like, you know, I think I want to go back to teaching. This was fun, but I really like teaching. I have a passion for teaching. Geez, Frankie's got a chance to go do what he wants to do without too much pressure of losing a job and finding a job, which he might have in a regular company. So this is a transition. The case in point was there was a company where there were 2 parents and some children and in-laws involved in the business. The business was sold. The family, I think they changed one of the children in the family, but there were still 2 others involved. And the new owners and the children didn't get along, and those children happened to be in sales. So the children left. It wasn't good for the children. They didn't get along with the new owner. They had to go find new jobs, and it wasn't good for the owner because they lost the sales group. So I'm sure, David, you've got plenty of examples like this where it hasn't done well, but also where it has, which I think is why this hits one of your top potholes.
Well, not only that, Chris, but the idea that a business has value because a buyer sees a future stream of income from the business. And he takes that future stream of income and factors in some level of risk that things are not going to work out as intended. And here with a family-owned company, not only do you worry about the clients, but you wind up worrying a little bit about the family members not getting along. And if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And so if mom is staying with the business, is coming back to work on Monday, and something goes wrong, we've now upset mom, we've upset daughter, we've upset son, we've upset some key people in this business. And so working with that to transition some people out of the business makes the business less risky, therefore more valuable.
And for those that, not the risk on even on the exit side, but just the growth, looking to growth, again, one of the keys to growth is the right people in the right seats. I mean, they're upgrading, their talent. You mentioned to me yesterday, David, we were talking about it, using the Red Sox, that phenomenal team here in New England, right, where they're always upgrading and looking to upgrade their players. I mean, most sports teams do that. But you made the comment, they're sold out, they're doing very well, but they're still upgrading their players.
Well, and that's really what we're going to talk about next, which is pothole number 5 and trends. Trends tell a powerful story. Trends talk about how the business is expected to perform in the future. Now, if we looked at 4 companies, all in the exact same industry, all making the exact same product, and this teal company is doing $7 million a year consistently. But then we've got this green company, and the green company did $3 million, then $10 million, followed by $6 million, and now it's doing $7 million. We've got a red company, and the red company was doing $10 million in revenue, then down to 9. Last year, 2 years ago, it did $8 million, and last year it did $7 million. And now, lastly, we've got a blue company. And the blue company did $2 million, then $4 million, $5 million, and now it's doing $7 million. If these 4 companies were all on the market at the same time, which one is the buyer most interested in? Which one is the buyer most likely to pay a premium for? Well, most people would suggest the blue company is more interesting because we like the trend. And my point here is this. It's not just 5 times EBITDA is value or whatever multiple is appropriate for your business or your industry. Every company can't have the exact same value. And so buyers look at all these other little aspects of your business and adjust value up or down based on what those other things tell them. Trends about how your business is doing is one of those key value drivers that help somebody pay more or less for a business. So a business with sales consistently going up has more value. A business with gross margins consistently going up has more value. And a business with profits consistently going up has more value. Now, we've all seen over the last couple of years that the economic challenges mean some of our trends are not necessarily up. I understand that. The buyers understand that. And to some degree, there's a little bit of a pause, if you will, of buyers looking at some of these things. But for those of you selling in 4 to 5 years from now, in the next 4 to 5 years, if the economy gets better, you will be expected to get better as well. If other businesses in your industry are growing, are becoming stronger, then you are going to be compared to some of those companies. Chris, how do we grow some of these aspects of our business?
And before I jump into the how, I want to elaborate, David, on the last comment you made, and we use the word, relative performance. So you've talked about trends, and then you added the relative performance. You've talked about, at this time, in the last few years, the economy in general hasn't been growing. There's very few industries that have been growing. Now, is it safe to say that if my trends, if I have a company and my trends aren't necessarily completely, lower left to top right, growing, but they're doing better than the industry or the segment that I'm in, that's almost more important or as important as just a positive trend?
Absolutely, Chris.
Okay, because that's part of what we try to advise clients on when we talk about growth is it's all relative. And I've been using the story lately where if you're talking to some of companies in traditional manufacturing industries, and you ask them how they're doing, and they said, geez, I was up 2% or 3% or 4%, something like that, and they're like, it's kind of been dead or flat. I've talked to some organizations, and I said, how you doing? And they said, oh, geez, you're up 12%. And I said, well, that's too bad. And they kind of look at me kind of weird, and I said, well, actually, I know your industry in particular was up 18%. And if you're up 12, that means you're not doing as well. So it's this relative discussion that I think is important, and I think as we talk about, helping organizations grow and also prepare for an exit, it's the story behind it. Is that true, David?
Buyers are always looking at how your business compares to other investment opportunities. So whether the other investment opportunities are T-bills, other people in your industry, or even other industries, we're always looking to say, what is the best opportunity out there? And buyers want to understand that about your business. And if you can show them things about your business that make it less risky and a higher growth, higher return on investment company, they'll pay you more value for it. And that's why we're here today.
And so what we're really talking about, we talk about positive trends, but we're talking about comparative trends. Therefore, we're really talking about a race. How do people on the line today, and how do they make their businesses better, these better trends, faster and better than their competition? And here's some suggestions. Now, the big picture here is typically you as an individual or an organization are not going to achieve a positive trend or achieve some increase in performance unless you invest or make some change in what you're doing. There's a common quote out there. I think it's the definition of insanity, right? Definition of insanity: doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So if you keep doing the same thing in your business and you expect a different result, that's called insanity. So let's put some goals in place to try to impact these positive trends. One thing you can do on the left side here, we'll talk about sales, improving the focus of your sales efforts and the effectiveness of your sales efforts. So we're not trying to sell everything to everybody. We're trying to be very focused on some niches, some segments. I'll go back to that customer survey when the select group of customers said they love your customer service, and another group lower down on the list said we like your price. Well, if you get the majority of people that are looking for the service, shouldn't that be the segment or niche that you're targeting? You can also increase the sales and marketing resources. So that could be the people, that could be the money you put behind it, the amount of advertising that you do, make people aware of what your products and services are. You can add new sales channels to your business. Again, we're talking about top-line growth. New channel could be online. Is your service available to go online? Retail, wholesale, through distributors. Change the geography. If it's a local regional company, can you expand the geography of who you sell to? These are all ways to change that revenue line, the revenue trend. But again, if you don't set some goals out to accomplish, my guess is you're not going to get anywhere. The right side of the equation is the profitability, gross profits and net income. So how do you drive gross profits? You've already got the material, labor, and overhead component of your business. What goals and objectives do you need to have to reduce the cost of goods sold? And again, can you put some targeted cost reduction initiatives in place? I'll also drive between gross profits and net income also talk about the process that we talked about earlier. So growing businesses really focus on the processes of their business. That drives efficiencies, which reduces cost. So back to that core process, this should help on the gross profit and net income side. You've also got on the income side, are there loans that are out there with higher interest rates that you could refinance? What about overhead costs? What about rent? Rent is something in private organizations that's played around with a lot. It's either too high or usually too low because the money's going also back to the owner. What can you impact on the cost of goods overhead side to make an impact on your gross profits or your net income? Again, start driving goals and objectives to impact positive trends. So back to pothole 5, which is build these positive trends, you got to set out some specific goals, and you got to track those goals and make them successful. That's it for number 5. Now I think we got David's going to grab the next slide.
Well, just before we do, to some degree, that was a little bit of what we were talking about the Red Sox, but to make the comment more appropriate to some of our listeners, people need to reinvest in their business. If you're, regardless of what business you're in, are you driving the business forward the same way you were 20 years earlier or when you first started out? And every dollar you spent, you thought about what kind of return do I get and how do I get the most out of this and how do I get the next customer? And often what we see is as business owners get towards the end of their life cycle, their business life cycle, they tend to play more golf. They tend to take more time off. They tend not to be focused on growing the business, but more or less just maintaining the business. And businesses that are just being maintained scare buyers more than businesses that are constantly growing. And if we're trying to get the most value we can for our business, make sure our business is moving forward and not just hanging out.
One of the questions, David, that I ask the owners, which usually get an interesting reaction to, is, picture yourself, 5, 10 years ago. If you were to buy this business today, but, maybe being 5 or 10 years younger, what would you do? What changes would you make? And it's amazing how many things are on that list that they would change and improve, but it's, getting older, just kind of relaxing, the maintenance mode, And some of them realize, geez, I guess I have a big list I should be working on. That's obviously what we're trying to do is get them to take some action. Go ahead.
And even from the standpoint of if you were going to buy your competitor, what are the things that scare you about buying your competitor? What are the things about your competitor you would change? And a lot of those are probably things that may scare a buyer about your business. And so if we can work together to fix some of those, we're going to create value. So we spent a few minutes this afternoon talking about being number one. Why? Because being number one makes a buyer less risky, feel more secure about buying your company. About creating sticky customer relationships. The adage is that Apple creates very sticky products. Once you have an iPhone, you want a Macintosh computer. Once you have a Macintosh, you want an iPad or an iPod. You want things that work well together, and you become an Apple customer. What about your particular business are we doing to create a long-term customer relationship? What can we do to mitigate the fact that when a business owner sells, he takes with him an awful lot of institutional knowledge? What can we do about the fact that some family members may be leaving with the business so that we create a situation that buyers like what they're buying and are willing to pay for it? What can we do about family in the business so that it's secure? And what can we do to create trends that tell an upbeat, positive story about the business? Chris, I think this quote's one of your favorites.
It's on my list. I'm a quote guy for those that get my emails, and I was looking for one for today in particular that kind of drives home the point that, hey, there's 5 potholes that we've talked about, identified maybe ways to resolve it. But you got to take action. You got to make change. And so this quote here, if you do not change direction, you may end up where you are heading. I liked that one. I was also looking at one that talks about, making change, but the other one I was looking for that had to do with time. It takes time to do that. I couldn't find one, so I made it up. Change takes time. How's that for a great quote? The point here is we all, especially with this group here, there's some looking in the next year, but many 4 or 5 years out, if not longer. It's going to take a while to make change in that business, in your business. What are the things that you're doing and addressing to improve upon it? It's a little bit every day, every week, every month. Too often, we've connected with owners that decide they want to get out in a year or two, and there's too much to get fixed. I don't know if, Dave, if you see that where, you talk to the owner and they're not ready, for many reasons, right? They haven't been working on that business. So I think the point here that I'd like to drive home is you got to make change, and it's going to take some time, so get working on it. You want to add to that, Dave?
I think that's exactly it, that so many people even come to Beacon sometimes after a crisis hits. Usually it's a health crisis that causes a long-term plan to become a very short-term plan very, very quickly. And at that point, the ability to work on some of these issues is not quite there. So before we even share with you real quick some of the other topics, Chris, was there another seminar, another survey question?
Another survey coming. Here it is. Question is, which of these challenges, which of these potholes is your biggest challenge? Of the 5 that we went through today, which one do you think you've got the biggest challenge within your business? So click on the votes here, not being number 1. Weak customer relationships. I don't have enough procedures defined or documented. That's the brain drain. There's too much family in the business. Or weak or poor trends. So check on which one you think's number 1. You only get 1 vote. You can't vote on all 5 whether you want to or not. But define which one's most important, because we'd be interested to see in the audience today. We've got some again that are a year or so out, but others that are in the 4 to 5 year out. Which of these is the biggest challenge? Okay, I've got almost 80% or so vote. I'm going to take another 10 seconds or so. So if you're at your computer and you're listening, please click on this thing. And then we're going to close the poll, and I'm going to share it. Okay, here's just about there. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to share it. What you should be seeing now is the greatest challenge people on the call today are having is not enough procedures defined or documented. That's what they call the brain drain. 50% are saying that's their biggest challenge, followed by weak or poor trends. Now, obviously, that's going to be connected to maybe the economy, but the question is how much is connected to maybe their industry and how well they're doing in that industry. And there's actually 14%, David, that are saying not being number 1. Let me ask you, David, reaction, I don't know if you can see this, but the biggest response was not enough procedures to find a document. That was 50% of them, followed by weak or poor trends.
And there's an awful lot of businesses that come to market with a business owner saying, don't worry about it. I'll be here to tell everybody what they need to know. And that may very well be true. But the reality that a buyer who's paying millions of dollars to step into a business is going to just trust that it's all going to be okay is very, very risky. And so to the extent that working with a client right now who buys stuff from buys product from manufacturers all over the world, depending on slight little nuances of what he's buying. And all of that knowledge is in file drawers in the back room. And there's no easy way to get to it. And there's no easy way to look up some of the past orders. And this sort of situation creates anxiety among buyers. Buyers are telling this particular business owner that I need you to stick around for a year or 2. In this particular case, he's open to that. But if there was a health issue, and that was not something that was available, he could very easily lose millions of dollars in opportunity. So I understand, and I understand exactly why so many people suggest that this is a problem for them.
Interesting. That's great. Well, that's, being an engineer, a process engineer, it's nice that people need to, well, maybe have a challenge with it, but maybe can address it. So I'm going to click it back to the presentation. Back to you, David.
There's a number of other potholes that we didn't have a chance to talk about today. Everything from having the permits to operate, investing in tomorrow, what your business name is, do you own the intellectual property, are you taking cash under the table, what is the quality of the financial statements, and that has a big impact. Buyers trusting the inventory, what kind of ratios does your business have compared to others, how does it look to a buyer, what are the real estate leases like. All of these issues have different impacts on certain people. For instance, financial statements are one of the easiest things to control. But by having the CPA firm put together high-quality financial statements, put together ones with financials with all the footnotes, and put together financials that are reviewed or audited, helps buyers feel comfortable. And the more they feel comfortable, the more they're willing to pay. So each of these different issues has an effect on value. And there's an opportunity that we could be talking about some of these others in one of our other webcasts coming up. If you're thinking about selling and want to maximize value, well, if you want to maximize value, Beacon Equity would be more than happy to help you. If you're looking to grow or to prepare to grow or prepare to sell your business, Growth Strategy Partners is a great name to call. Chris, tell us some of the things you might be able to do for them.
We've been dealing with owners that want to grow and or exit, and so we've built a few tools back to how do we help organizations. This is the sales part of this presentation, which is 1 minute, not even that. But we've identified this value enhancement analysis. It's a tool to identify, how to increase the value of the business. Okay, so whether that value is to just grow it or to exit, it's a small project. For those that need to put the big plan in place, we've got a 2-day workshop where we can actually build a strategic plan using a best practice tool called the Balanced Scorecard. These are two of a couple other tools that we have that are really designed to help the owner of the private business grow and be more successful. Again, ways we can kind of get to know each other and see if we can help each other. So that's some things that we could do. David, do you want to? We got a few questions coming up. I've been looking. I got about 10 minutes left. Maybe we can answer some of these questions, then we can wrap up. How's that sound?
That sounds fine.
One of these is a question on a business that's been hit hard by the economy. How many years do we need to make a trend? And before you answer that, David, if there's others that have questions, now's the time to put them out there. Go ahead.
I think that's a great question. And to some degree, what we're trying to do with this presentation is smooth the road that we had a pothole in when we started this. Smooth the road so we can get you from the road of the pothole to a more relaxing place. How long does that trend need to be? It depends. And to some degree, it comes down to this. Sometimes for certain businesses, and especially coming out of an economic challenge that we've had, the trend can be as much as show me 6 months of upward trend. When we have a period of time when business is growing very well, it may be 2 or 3 years of trend. It depends on what's going on in your industry, and it depends on what's going on with buyers in general. Right now, buyers in general in today's marketplace understand that the business climate has been challenging. So if you've taken a big dip, they understand that. The question is, are you coming back off that dip? And the businesses that are showing that their backlog is increasing, businesses that show that sales in January was up from December and February is up from January, if they can show the right trend, we can find a buyer who understands. I'll
also add, does it also connect, David, even though the trends, right, it goes back to what's been going on in the economy and in their industry, right? Because again, I know some industries that were growing 12, 15, 16% the last 3 or 4 years, and if organizations weren't matching that, at least, as a buyer, you'd be looking at it going, oh, they're average. They were riding the trend. They hadn't done anything internally within the business. So although they had a positive trend, it wouldn't be as perceived as well as somebody that may have been growing 5% or 6% in an organization in an industry that was flat, meaning they were outperforming their market segment. Is that fair?
It's very fair, and to some degree, Chris, and this is really where your organizations helped some of our clients in the past, was by looking at the business objectively, looking at the business from the outside and saying, yes, I understand that you're proud of a 5% growth, but others are growing differently. And you having the data and the tools to help somebody analyze that and understand that helps sometimes a business owner look at their business as an outsider would. Look at their own business as if they were the buyer and use those results to help make those changes.
Okay. Here's somewhat a related one. I'm going to paraphrase it. What's a reasonable time frame to prepare for the sale? And then once you're prepared, what's a reasonable expectation for how long it's going to take to sell it? You want to take the back half? Go ahead.
I would tell you some of the things in that list of potholes, making sure you have the right lease, can probably be done in a matter of months. Making sure you have the permits up to date can take a couple of months. Not a big deal. Showing a trend or having good, solid, several years' worth of audited financials, obviously to have several years of audited financials takes several years. So certain things take more time than others. And quite possibly transitioning family out of a business to find the right opportunity so that everybody works, so that it works for the family. Family businesses are great because it's all about the family, and we're big believers in family. But transitioning family members out of a business can take some time. So different potholes take different amounts of time to fix. Once the potholes are fixed, right now we're seeing 9 to 12 months to get a business sold quietly. It would be easy to put a big billboard out on the highway to try and sell a business. But that's not the way most people want their business sold. They want it sold quietly without the world knowing their business. And so to do that confidentially probably takes about 9 to 12 months.
And if I was to add to that, based on the companies that we've seen, in terms of really what value they want, we've seen a year to year and a half, and you made your comment about, even just audited financials. That's a whole other issue if you don't have those. There's a couple of years at least having those. Yeah, you can go back and do that, but, we've seen it's taken a good year, year and a half to put some of the fundamentals in place for these organizations so that you don't have the brain drain. You don't have information hidden. There's basic financials that can be printed and reported on, and not just the financial information, but the customer and average customer order size and marketing campaigns and building kind of that process, that growth process in the business. It's taken a year, year and a half. So if you add that, and that's average companies, right? Some of them are worse off, some of them are better off. I think part of today's point is, the sooner you start working on this, A, the better your company will be, and then B, if the time comes you do want to exit, you'll be better prepared. But if you add my year, year and a half to your, 9 months to a year, we're at 2 years, a little longer, right?
Well, and even to some degree, we can be marketing a business while you are helping them grow it. And again, that's creating a trend. So buyers can look at a business and say, yes, they're taking the steps to grow the business. I'm interested. So it doesn't have to be all of A before we can begin part B. So it doesn't have to be 24 months.
Dave, ask you one last thing, one last question here. What do you, of these potholes, which one do you think is the deadliest? Which one do you think could derail a deal or really hurt someone when it comes to getting out and exiting?
The deadliest pothole is veracity. So that wasn't one of the ones we covered today. But
That was on the list. What are you doing?
One of the deadliest potholes is where a buyer is looking at a business and finds the seller lying to him. He cheated on a tax return. He is misstating his income or his expenses. To some degree, we've run across every one of these situations over the last 15 years. And that right there, when a buyer finds out that the seller is not trustworthy, kills a deal almost every time.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's focus on the good quality companies where the information is there. They have the right trends. They're doing the right things to keep their customers happy, and it can take a few years and enjoy some retirement.
A lot of retirement.
A lot of retirement.
All right, we're pretty much at time. If there's some questions that we didn't get to, we'll try to answer those later directly. We have your email through your registration. I'd like to thank you, Dave. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We are planning a live event later on in this year. We'll let you know through your email when that will be. If you can make it, that would be great. I think, at least for myself, I hope you learned something today. More importantly, that you take action to start, addressing some of the challenges that you have. At least according to the poll, the brain drain and the procedures was the big thing. So I guess I'd encourage you to take some action on it, starting this afternoon. Dave, you want to add something?
Chris, thank you very much for co-hosting this with me. I hope the participants each got something out of this. We look forward to helping you if the situation arises. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. We're done.